Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to pull handles. So if you guys are interested in making mugs, pitchers, really any sort of handled vessel, this is going to be the video for you. It's going to be a quick short one. And this is not the only way to make a handle, but it is how to pull one in the easiest in my opinion. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to need is a block of clay. This can really be any sort of shape right now, a wire tool, and a bucket of water. So I'm gonna go ahead and portion out my clay. You really don't need a whole lot for a handle, but I usually cut just like a small little bit like this. If you have a longer vessel, maybe a little bit more clay because you're gonna want a longer handle, but the key is to have a little bit of extra clay here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pat this in. I like to have a nice cone-like shape. You can kind of just squeeze it so that way you have this nice little tower here. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my water here. We're going to dip our bit in here. You want to make sure you have enough to hold on to here at the top. We're going to get our other hand in nice and wet, and we're just going to slowly pull. Now you want to make sure that you're not grabbing and like yanking. You kind of want to use the muscle between your thumb and your pointer finger and just slowly move that. Now with all of us, it's going to curve one way because we are right or left-handed. So I like to kind of move my clay back and forth. So I'm kind of doing a little bit on each side. Now, if you ever feel like you're getting sticky, go ahead and add a little bit more water, but you're really adding light pressure here. And typically, if you're doing this with a piece that needs to be trimmed or anything like that, go ahead and do this before you trim it, because you do want this to have time to set up, because we are adding a lot of water, so this is going to be a bit wetter to work with at first. So I have this, it's about 6 inches here. I'm gonna go ahead and move my water out of the way, and all we're gonna do is just use this and slap that up like that. And then if it's not staying, go ahead and just give this a squish down. You are gonna essentially cut all of this off. It's all about getting this natural angle here. So as you guys can see, it just kind of dries like that. So if you have something you want to trim, I would go ahead and pull the handle and then leave it to set up. And while you're trimming, this will have about 20 minutes because you want this to be able to like move just slightly, but not enough that's going to break and not too wet to the point where you're still leaving finger marks on it, that in-between point. So we'll go ahead and let this set up, and then we'll give it about 20 minutes. Okay, so we've let our handle set up. This is a prime example of why the weather will end up adjusting how we time things. It is a cold and rainy day here today, and so this actually didn't take 20 minutes. This took about 2 hours, but we got it at the consistency that we want it to be at, so where it'll move a little bit, but not so much that I'm going to end up really changing this natural curve that we have. So now that we have that, we're going to have our pot that we want to attach our handle to, our needle tool, and what we have here is slip. And if you're not familiar with what slip is, it's basically just watered down clay. Basically the mud that'll end up accumulating in your splash pans after throwing. Save that, it's great for attachments and things later. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut off our handle here. And we're not gonna use all of this. Right now we're just gonna kind of use this to see roughly about where our shape is. We're gonna kind of put this up to our handle. And this is really teaching us how to look at this rather than like, oh, let's make this fit. So this is quite a bit too long. You can also see that this angle here doesn't line up with where the top of this handle is. We're gonna go ahead and cut just a little bit off at a time. We'll use our needle tool. We'll take a little bit off of the top. And let's go ahead and take a little bit off the bottom as well. So we have a little bit less here. This is still a bit long, but this is why we want everything just a little bit wet still, so that way I can adjust this, because otherwise we'd be stuck at this angle that doesn't fit. So that does fit, however that doesn't always mean that that's what we want. So we can either stick with this, or I can cut it a little bit shorter. I feel like this top part here might be a little chunky, so I'm going to take a little bit further off of that, and maybe a little bit off the bottom to match. So I'm thinking that should go well. How do we feel about this? Like it? Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my handle, and we're just going to go ahead and kind of line this up where we want. I always kind of look at it from the sides, that way you make sure that it's actually in line rather than like one side over. So once we have this kind of set on here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle tool and I'm just going to take 2 marks on the outside of each spot where it connects. So when we're done, it should look like that. And what we're going to do is slip and score. So if you're not familiar with what slipping and scoring is, if you were to take 2 pieces of clay together and just smash them together, even though right now it's being held together, what's holding it is just the moisture. So when it goes into the kiln, it's going to get to, you know, a couple thousand degrees and moisture is going to evaporate, it's going to fall apart. So what we need to do is we need to score the surface of everything that gets attached. So I will score, meaning I'm just going to rough up this surface on both of my connection spots. I'm also going to do the same on my handle here. And what this does is this lets a little bit of like an indent for our slip to lay into. So the slip here will work just like glue. So I usually have a little paintbrush in here. We're going to take this liquid clay here and we're just going to dab that in there. What that's going to do is it's going to seep into the crevice, and when we push it onto our pot, it's going to seep into that side too, and it's essentially just going to fuse it into one piece. So it kind of gets into the pot itself, not just like lying on the surface there. Now when you attach this, do make sure that you're not like crushing your handle, that you're kind of attaching from the bottom and the top connection points here. It's going to help. Now you can spend all day smoothing this out. You can take your sponge and even smooth that out, and if you want, you know, you can always just kind of adjust the shape a little bit if it changes as we get there. So I like that. My favorite thing to do once I kind of get this most of the way set up is we're going to get to the top and the bottom. We're just going to give it a nice little push in there just to make sure that this stays on there. Another real key point to anything that's like attachment wise, any handles, spouts, things like that that you may add onto your pots, even just like little decorations, is always to keep an eye out for moisture levels. You really want your handle in your pot or whatever you're attaching to be the same moisture level. Because if one is much drier, say our pot was much drier than our handle, what's going to happen is when it dries, the pot's going to dry much faster and eventually it's just going to crack off. So you always want to try and make sure that you're attaching things at a very similar moisture level, which is why we ended up waiting for this to set up also, so that way we didn't ruin the handle. So another thing I like to do is take a little paintbrush, and please don't use your nice paintbrushes on this, it's not worth it. Just a nice cheap paintbrush will do, and it'll help get into the seams that we really can't get our fingers into. Alright, so there you have it guys, this is how we do a handle. So hopefully that was helpful, and if you ended up liking my video, go ahead and click like, subscribe, and thank you for watching.